So yeah, tell me.
Equity at its best.
This is part 5 of our interview with Anne, and the question was, in what ways does education help marginalized groups?
Yeah, so I was just saying that, like, education sets us free. Where's that quote? Shoot, I can send it to you, but it's about how you can't something about education means you can't be a slave, right? I mean, it applies to this notion of you can't, like, education is a way of freeing yourself from oppression. And it's also a way of freeing yourself, not just from oppression on the receiving kind of end of oppression, it's a way of freeing yourself from being the oppressor, right? Like, learning where you are where you are taking up too much space. Learning where you are holding too much power, and then setting aside that and saying, I don't want to do that anymore. That, like, makes room in your soul, you know, in ways that feel really good, or at least that's what I've felt since the election. Because I have friends who challenge me. I think we should all have friends who challenge us, right? We should keep the people close who sometimes make us uncomfortable because they point out the things in us that we don't like. That makes sense. So I have friends and people I love who sometimes point out when I am being not good versions of myself. And sometimes I get annoyed at them, right? We all do, because we want to be perfect, we want to be amazing all the time, and we're not. Sometimes we do dick things. And if we're white, sometimes we do racist things. And one of the biggest things that's happened for me in the past couple of years is really learning to listen. And I'm always still learning, right? So always being ready and open to other people calling me out when I'm being problematic. And then taking that and also trying to call out people when they're doing it, even when no one else is there. My family, I don't know if this is getting too off topic, but yeah, okay. So both of my parents were, they're white, and they were raised in very different environments. My dad in a kind of more upper middle class, smaller, I think Protestant, but kind of the Christian white, more typical tradition. And my mom was the daughter of very working class, Italian and also Irish, and worked very hard. She was a benefit of affirmative action and became a lawyer. And both of them taught me and my sister the histories of struggle, right? The histories of oppression, racism, sexism. We learned about these battles growing up. And my sister and I now, especially since the election, have had a lot of conversations, especially with my mom, with my dad too. My dad, I think, sometimes feels more overwhelmed, so sometimes we just talk, but he always listens. My mom really, like, I can see she's also learning, because I think her generation, they fought patriarchy hard. Like, men were real assholes to her. Like, she's horrible stories of, you know, being the only woman in a courtroom, and she's small, short like me, and just men, you know, totally not taking her seriously. And as a lawyer, especially a lot of her clients are people of color, like, she can't just go in and challenge the judge, because, like, she needs to represent her clients in ways that will give them benefit. But so we had a lot of frank conversations about, well, you know, as white people, we have to be strategic, and we also have to figure out where we're changing things. I think once she called someone articulate. It was several years ago, and then she said, well, it's just he's very well spoken. It was a black man on TV, and we started talking about it. And I think what I so admire about my mom is that she didn't shut down. Me and my sister and my mom were in the car, and we talked about, like, well, you know, 40 years ago, okay, no one was talking about articulate being racially coded language, but now people are, and here's why. It's kind of based on this assumption, like, why are you surprised? Like, and even if you think you wouldn't, even if you think you'd call a white man articulate in your brain, like, let's just go with the body of evidence and the other voices that are saying, can we just not do this, right? Like, even if we make our efforts to treat all the rest of the world equal, because we do our best, we can still listen to voices that are saying these things are problematic, and just take it at that. Because like my need to call someone articulate, it's not that strong, right? It's a word. I can find other ideas to convey. I can think deeply also too about, if I do think, right, Obama gets a lot of that. Like, well, he's so well spoken, he's so articulate, as if everyone's so surprised. His words are beautiful. I love hearing him speak. I love hearing many people speak. But too often, people really seem to be surprised by how beautiful his words are, right? And they say things on the air, especially, I think we're conservative media sources. There was like really racist stuff too, right? Like totally outright racist against him, and also Michelle. But anyway, so I think my family kind of profoundly shaped my view on this stuff, because they also really intentionally, this ties into education, is that the Peace Works School, 38th Street School, and if you ever do something with this, I would love to like send it to MP. So Milwaukee Public Schools, like I would love to be part of videos, and I know many people who would love, was intentionally designed, 38th Street School, to be a space that attracted people of many different backgrounds. So at the time, I think it was federally mandated that Milwaukee desegregated schools. And one of the programs they had, the 220 integration program, was a program where if you were white and living in the suburbs, you could go to city schools, and if you were a student of color, minority student, I think was the label also used, then you could go to a school in the suburbs. But that meant, for example, white students living in the city could not go to the suburbs. So I'm already jumping, or telling you the end, I think, in that the program didn't last, right? Suburban schools got angry that so many students of color were coming to them, and white students in the suburbs weren't going into the city a lot. They were going in at smaller numbers, and so it kind of fell apart. And it's, I think, terribly and horribly, it's awful it fell apart. It's the reason why 60 years after Brown versus Board in 1954, 60 years afterwards, we are just as segregated in our schooling system. Because this program, and I think these programs, we have to bring them back, these integration programs, at the elementary level, at the kindergarten level. I mean, we have to do it to our neighborhoods first, right? But I think we can start via schools, because it's harder to convince people to move. It's a little easier to convince schools to change. 38th Street School was a school where, like, I grew up taking African dance classes and feeling awkward and stupid and not having a lot of spaces to talk about why. I think that is what we could do differently, is understanding that we don't fall into cultural appropriation ever, right, that kind of stuff, that I don't think we had the vocabulary for in the early 90s when I was in school. But we had a Hmong dance group that I always remember loving to watch. I wasn't a part of that one. We learned instruments. We took drumming with, I think the drummer was from Ghana, a visiting drummer who came and taught us how to drum, and like taught us how like drums were used to communicate, and are still used to communicate in different parts of the world. We made flags of different countries. We ate food from many places. And one thing I think I started talking about, and I didn't finish earlier, was when I was really little, I had friends from all different backgrounds. One of my closest friends was Jean Vang, and I have no idea where she is in this world. I could probably find her on Facebook now that I think of it. But I just remember being a really good friend with her. She was Hmong, and you know, as we got older, I don't know, I think it's like in this school we were all trying to fit together, but we never talked about the fact that I think all of the teachers were white. I don't remember any teachers of color, and they were mostly white women. And I think the administrators were usually white men. There's a woman too. And a lot of the teacher aides were people of color. Computer teacher was a person of color, I remember. Miss Barbie, I think her name was. Oh man, that's a whole nother story. Those computers, you know, probably early technology. But we took arts classes. I think arts, in education, we've cut our arts programs and our music programs. Like, art and music is how we connect as human beings. So that has to be a fundamental part of our education. Like, we need to learn to appreciate arts from all different cultures, because that's how we see that, like, that's how we understand that Black Lives Matter, because we have to say Black Lives Matter and Brown Lives Matter and Queer Lives Matter and Indigenous Lives Matter and Standing Rock needs to be said. We have to be saying those things, and we can say them when we're better able to make those connections, to feel connections to other groups, when we understand that at the deeper level, we're all connected as humans through art and culture and expression. And education can be that transformation we need in our society. 38th Street School wasn't perfect, but it was a really cool experiment. Peaceworks was we had like peacemaker badges you could get, but like we had mediation rooms you would go into and learn, and hopefully today, schools, I think there are a lot of smaller schools doing that, but that also needs to have, right, the missing piece there that now I can see, but I couldn't see then, was that they were almost all white teachers. And so there were some issues with that, right? Now, we still have a lot of white teachers. I was just at the Teaching for Social Justice conference in Chicago. My sister teaches school, and this is kind of maybe a lot of detours, but she called me 2 nights ago because and this is another student that she knew was killed. And I don't know how many times she's called me, and I can tell when I pick up the phone, her voice is she's devastated because she remembers this 12-year-old kid goofing off her. Maybe he was even younger when she worked with him and went to camp with him, and now he's dead. And he was 18, and he was killed by gun violence in Chicago. And what felt different, and that's why I talk about this election, I think changed something for me, is I didn't cry when she told me this story. And I didn't cry because I'm not gonna spend a lot of time, I didn't know him, and I feel the depth of his loss.
I think one of the things that could help significantly relates to these beliefs that I mentioned earlier, being responsive. If we really mean that we're going to be responsive to a student as a learner and an individual, then fair and equal are not the same thing. You look at school systems, whether it's accessing specific programs and providing the supports once the access takes place, that takes a lot of commitment. But also, how do we ensure the experience is responsive? I think one